There we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday here on Even Tacos Fall Apart. I'm really glad that you are here with us today, and I am super looking forward to our conversation. But I am joined tonight by Garrett Wood. Garrett, thank you so much for spending your time here with us today.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as y'all know, hopefully by now we do these live so that y'all can ask questions. Feel free to pop any questions that you have into the chat. We'll make sure to get to them. But our topic tonight is going to be ADHD and dyslexia and midlife diagnoses, which I think is something that a lot of this community we've talked about kind of around. So I'm excited to dig into it a little bit. But Garrett is a clinical hypnotherapist and executive functioning specialist. He's the founder of Gnosis Therapy, where he works with executives, founders, and entrepreneurs who want to perform at a high level without wrecking their health and their relationships to get there. Over 18 years, he has built what he calls the A cubed framework: assess, accommodate, and align. And it maps out 7 drivers of performance, everything from sensory intelligence to emotional regulation to executive functioning strengths. Garrett uses coaching, somatic regulation, and clinical hypnotherapy to help people break the boom and bust cycle of burnout for good. And as I mentioned, we're talking about midlife diagnoses, and Garrett was diagnosed with ADHD and dyslexia at 40. So today we're going to dive into all of that and just, yeah, we're going to get into this story here. But again, welcome, Garrett, and thank you. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, so excited to be here. Thanks for that lovely intro. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I have some socials for y'all. If you want to connect with Garrett, feel free to just click on through to any of these and make sure that you like a post, you comment on a post, and that you retweet or repost a post, and that'll get him all into your algorithm. That's what really matters for all of that. So just go in and do a little bit of engagement is all that I'm asking of you today. So, Garrett, I would love to just kind of open us up here with understanding what made you become interested in specializing in mental health.
Yeah, before that, I was in the health and fitness world, and
Mm.
wellness was always kind of a big part of that. And there's an interesting change in the mental health space where they're moving away from just medical model of deficits into maybe there's something else over here about increasing people's mental health instead of just, eliminating the bad. Focusing on the good is kind of a nice shift. So that's kind of that well-being model that I kind of jumped in at. And it's kind of always been a natural fit for me with my past career. But it was when I was working for a large corporation and I was going through my own burnout. But in the corporation I was in, it was very production based. And so we would look at reports every hour sometimes at certain cycles of business. And we would be looking at these reports and just comparing our performance versus everybody else's. And there was always one
Mm.
person at the top of that list. Um, and they always seemed like they had it together. I was like, okay, if this person can do it, I should be okay. I got to figure this out. I thought it was my own fault, my own mistakes, all these things that were my own personal struggles. And I was too embarrassed and ashamed to admit them to anybody. So at that time, my back pain, chronic hip pain, my cute little puppy wasn't as cute because I was very irritated, frustrated. My sleep was terrible. My relationship was strained with my partner. It was not great. The numbers were okay. We were doing all right. I felt like we were doing good work, but I wasn't. I wasn't doing well.
Mm-hmm.
So I ended up meeting with a hypnotherapist and I did 12 sessions with them, which was pretty wild. The reason why I got started is because my sleep was so terrible. And at the time, there was a study that came out that said people's health and wellness goals were easier to reach it more based upon their sleep intervention than food or their time in the gym.
Oh,
And I was
interesting.
like, okay, so abs are made not in the kitchen, they're not made in the gym, they're made in the bed. Oh, okay, cool, excellent. I don't sleep at all. This is going to be a problem. So, in non sleep deep rest, which is kind of a hypnotic state, it's pretty restorative for our body, for our mind. And it seems like it makes up for some sleep deficit. It's a little bit of variable. So I was like, great, hypnotherapy seems to be the way to do this. Let's go for it. But at the end of those 12 sessions, my back pain was gone, my hip pain was gone, my dog was cuter than ever before, my relationship was thriving. But then, even more than that, our numbers were better. That spreadsheet that I was talking about, we were performing better. My team was enjoying it. And I realized at that moment that I was the jerk. My well being, my lack of being okay was the bottleneck for so many other people that had to deal with me on a day to day basis. So that was kind of a big wake up call for me.
Yeah. So whenever you were doing these hypnotherapy sessions, did you tell the hypnotherapist like, I want to focus on sleep, and then they just focused on other things? Or do you feel like sleep was the underlying thing that fixed it?
We, in any hypnotherapy session, you kind of talk a little bit before. So it's very
Mhm.
similar that way to traditional therapy. So, hey, how's it going? What's been going better, worse, or same this week? What do you want to focus on? Okay, talk to me about how you think about that, what it means. Do you remember the first time you felt that? Similar therapeutic conversation. And then usually when you're in a state of hypnosis, whatever came out in that session that seemed like it was valuable or useful gets reinforced in there. So it's just an
Mm.
easier way to access some of that intuitive knowing and some of that like hard-earned wisdom that when you're having a good day and you're well rested, it's easy to remind yourself on, but when you're having a bad day, it's a little bit harder to keep focused on those good feelings. So
Yeah. And then what made you pivot from the health and wellness kind of focus to really becoming a mental health focus yourself?
yeah, so that same person that I was always envious of on the top of that spreadsheet, who always seemed to have it together, they were suddenly let go from the organization. And we were all kind of shocked
Oh,
about
wow.
that. And I was in a meeting with his replacement about 2 weeks afterwards. And in that meeting, we gotten word that without his position, which he'd had for 20 years, it was his whole identity. It was his family, it was his
Mm.
friends. And without that, he didn't know if he had anything else that was worth living for. So he decided not to. And so
Yeah.
that was like a really big wake up call, not just for my own health, but here, this person that I think is the be all end all and doing well. And they've been obviously suffering for who knows how long. And that isn't okay. So
Yeah.
these people that are doing really well, they're showing up, they're functioning, they might be the top performers in whatever organization they're in. Just because they're functioning that way doesn't mean they're okay. And what it costs them to be able to do that, from my own experience, I can only imagine what he was feeling. So,
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that sounds super familiar, super familiar. That high functioning anxiety, high functioning depression, just you can appear however you want to appear if you're a good enough actor, to be honest. So, you can kind of put that on and say, "Well, I got shit to take care of, so I'm going to go about my day and take care of it here." And then, you don't know what people's lives are like outside of your own interactions with them.
yeah.
So, is there a movie or a book or a game or anything like that that's had a lasting impact on you?
So many books. Those are some of my favorite things. There's one, Nurturing Resilience. I
Hmm.
forget the authors of it now, but they talk a little bit about what resilience comes from. And I really appreciate their approach because a lot of times we think of resilience as like a strength that you've developed and you can experience terrible things and rise to the occasion and be better for it. And it's almost like a badge of honor for some people the way they talk about this idea of resilience. And there is some of that. Angela Duckworth has her book Grit, where they talk about perseverance, goal driven perseverance is the thing that makes people successful. And then there's a kind of a confabulation that happens with resilience and grit, almost as if they're synonyms for each other. But in the book Nurturing Resilience, they go into where it shows up, how it's created, the circuitry that you actually need to have in place for you to be able to express any type of resilience. And so some of that's about being in a loving, attuned relationship when you're younger, because the more of that co regulation you have, the more you're borrowing their nervous system to calm yours when you're a
Hmm.
child. And the more access to that you have, the more of it you have access to, even as you continue to grow and develop. And so being able to experience resilience isn't just something you can like put your mind to. It's a little bit more involved than that. And so I really appreciated their approach to that subject.
Yeah, that sounds like a great one. So, is that the one by Kathy Kane and Stephen Terrell and Peter Levine? The right
You got
one?
it. Yep.
Okay, great.
Yep.
Yeah, one of my goals this year is to read three nonfiction books. I read 50 books a year, but never, I mean, not never, not nonfiction generally. It's just, it never sparks my fire. So I'm in the middle. I started a book Friday. I'm actually almost done with it, but I started my first one more than halfway through the year. I started my first nonfiction book. So we'll get there. Maybe I can
Excellent.
add that one to my list.
It's a little dry, but it's worth reading. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you're interested. Yeah.
Yeah, and I resilience is something that I always feel like And oh, she's so resilient. Sometimes you hear that term, especially if you're high functioning, like we were just talking about. You hear that term, and it's like, I wish I didn't have to be, you know? So you can
Yeah.
hear that term and really have kind of a gut reaction to it one way or the other of either I never really learned how to build resilience, or I wasn't, my childhood wasn't great, and so I feel like I missed out on the ability to do that. Or at the same time, you can also be going, I wish I didn't have to be so resilient in my life. It'd be nice to not have to do that. So resilience is one that I
Yeah.
like to read about just to get different people's takes.
And the idea there too is if you don't have access to that growing up, doesn't mean you can't develop it. It just means it's a little bit more challenging. You have to be a little bit more intentional. It doesn't happen incidentally, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a little bit of work and a little bit of practice.
Is there anything that folks are always surprised to learn about you?
A few things. One, I do parkour as my sport of choice,
Oh,
which is
fun.
kind of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, most people's like they think of the episode of The Office where they're in
Yes.
there jumping all over everywhere.
That is
And
immediately
that
what
gets
jumps to mind. Yes.
immediately, yeah. And everybody in that community really kind of like box at that a little bit. But
Yeah.
I think they should embrace it because it's funny, it's silly, it's lighthearted. And they definitely demonstrate how challenging parkour is as a sport in there because they do not do a good job of it. So it's pretty fun. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like whenever they're going through and doing it, they're doing it in a very silly way, and they're doing it poorly, but they're doing it like a kid would do it. So it's kind of like, yeah, because they're doing
Endearing.
it like a kid would do it. So,
Yeah. And
oh,
that's how you start is doing whatever you can do and then
hmm,
getting better from there. And I got into that sport just before 2018, 2019.
hmm,
And so it was pretty new. I was pretty, a little bit later starting a new sport like that. And it was really interesting because you're like, oh, yeah, I could do a box jump. Sure, I can do a broad jump. Okay, can I do that 6 feet off the ground? Can I do that
hmm,
12 feet off the ground? Can you do that 20 feet off the ground? The skill and the strength don't change, but something else does. And whatever
yeah.
that something else is, what the sport's all about. Trying to figure out how to work with that safely.
Oh, I love the way that you just put that because I've seen videos where they're doing parkour on these like huge buildings and these huge structures, even if it's not a building, but and it would terrify me for sure. I would not be able to do that. I'm not super afraid of heights. I am afraid of dying. So, uh,
Yeah. And some people look at that and they go, oh, this is so reckless. What are they doing? And there are some people that are very reckless, right? But for
sure.
you to be an athlete for any length of time, you can't be reckless. And
Hmm.
so you can't be cowardice. You can't be reckless. So it's trying to find that little average of the mean there where it's being brave and smart and skillful. And if you're not doing those things, you're not doing the sport.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. So you were diagnosed at 40. Walk me through when you got that diagnosis. What led you to getting to where you felt like you needed to get a diagnosis, and then how did you go about doing that?
Yeah. So when I opened my clinic 2018, full time working with executives that need more support. They're tired of being resilient. To your point, they need something else besides that. A lot of them came in, and half of them have been formally diagnosed when they were younger with ADHD or another neurodevelopmental difference. And then the other half of the people that I was seeing had never been diagnosed, had never been a thought in their mind, but the symptoms that they were experiencing and the way it was showing up in their life, there was a more overlap than there wasn't. And so
Hmm.
that kind of got me thinking because I felt like I fit in with all these people. I'm like, oh, yeah, I know that feeling. Of course. Yeah, exactly. That's not unique. Everyone feels that. No, we all, not everybody, just, okay.
It's not
Um,
everyone, huh?
it's not everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. It's so having that conversation, face to face with people on an intimate level where they're sharing their like behind the scenes, they're sharing the mask and the struggles and just feeling like, wow, I really relate to almost every single one of these types of stories. There's something in there. So, and yeah, went and got an evaluation and they were like, absolutely. Yeah. And also here's some other ones we're going to sprinkle on top as well. So,
Yeah. Did it surprise you to get the ones sprinkled on top as well? Like you clearly went in thinking, okay, well, maybe ADHD, I'll get evaluated, I'm seeing these similarities. What surprised you the most?
The the fact that ADHD went unacknowledged, like the
Mm.
fact that I just apparently had blinders on for so long, looking back now, it seems so blatantly obvious. I'm like clear, like unmistakable. But hindsight is way
Yeah.
different than foresight. So, but yeah, when I went in addition to that, I was kind of certain when I went in, I was like, this is probably the case. We'll see. It could be something else. It could be, I've had a history of head trauma, so maybe it's from that and it's like an actual cognitive issue. Maybe it's, some challenging situations I went through when I was younger and it's this trauma response that creates some of that stuff. Because there is acquired executive function difficulties that don't involve ADHD. So I was open to that idea. But when I look at my family, I'm like, oh, it's not just me. It's a lot of us.
Mm-hmm.
That's okay. So that seemed to be more evidence that it was heritable more than it was environmental for me. But when I went in, they definitely talked about dyslexia and just graphia as well, which as soon as you have a name for something, your brain kind of goes and like, oh, what fits in that category? What else? Now that I have that term, what associates with it?
Right.
And I worked as a server for a long time growing up, and you're taking the order, you're taking the notes, you go back, you type it in. I would be at the computer typing in the food, and I would be looking at my handwriting, and I could not read my own handwriting
Oh
at
no.
all to save my life. And then I would try to remember, like, okay, what did they order? And I wouldn't be able to remember. So then I'd just look at them and I just stare and take some breaths, and eventually it would like pop into my head. I'd type it in. So when they say, dysgraphia, I'm like, oh, of course, like that has been present for so long and it's slowed me down and been so stressful in those moments, where, you know, stakes are high. You just got sat at 10 top at a station of 40 people and you're the only person there. You're like, oh, I don't have time for this. So uh, it definitely wasn't a surprise once you have the name and you have the association. As soon as you
Mm-hmm.
start looking through that lens, so many things that were like, oh, it's just a whatever, come into like crystal clear focus. It's like wearing my glasses or not, essentially.
Right. Right. Yeah, I would imagine it helps you look back and go, okay, well, more things make sense, even if you didn't know that it was something quote unquote wrong, right? It's like, no, that tracks. I'm sure there's plenty of those moments as soon as anybody gets a diagnosis. For me, it was getting that uh, uh, CPTSD diagnosis was like, oh, okay, yes, all right, I see. Yeah, no, that makes sense. Oh, and then the postpartum depression also was very much one that it was like, oh, right, that's not normal. Okay, I got it. It makes sense. So I know that there's a
Normal enough that
difference.
there's a name for it and that
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that have a shared experience, enough for it to be a
exactly.
normal type of experience, even if it's not an ideal one, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, no, and you definitely get that moment of, okay, well, if there's other people like me, then maybe there's some things that could help me, which is hopefully where a lot of people go with it as soon as they hear that is like, okay, well, what helps with dyslexia? What helps with dysgraphia? So that's great. For those who don't know, can you describe dyslexia and dysgraphia for us?
Dyslexia is interesting because there's a lot of different types of it.
Hmm.
So just because you know one person does not mean you know everybody else's experience with it. My personal one is I'm terrible at spelling.
Hmm.
I have been, does not matter how often. Scrabble is the worst game.
Oh
I
no.
love Monopoly. I think it's fun to play. Scrabble, no. Wheel of Fortune, no. Jeopardy, yes. Like it's very clear, um, these distinctions for me. Putting words in order, to me, it's like a general suggestion. I'm like, okay, what people are decoding on Wheel of Fortune or like those anagrams where they're all messed up, that's
Hmm.
just kind of, I'm like, no, that's the word. I, and they're like, no, can't you see what's wrong there? I'm like, I mean, all the letters are there, I think. Yeah, that's the T and the E, the I's in
Hmm.
there. We're good. We got them all. It's just like in the general area
Yeah.
is good enough. But when I read, I don't read an individual letter, nor do I read that one word, right? you read for meaning and understanding, and so you're taking a lot more information at a rapid rate. So you don't slow down to see all those things. So I just don't see it. It's almost like I'm blind to it.
Yeah. I was going to ask about, you said that you love reading, so I was going to ask if it hinders you at all, but it sounds like you just kind of, did you learn to read like as just entire words instead of going letter by letter, or was that difficult for you?
I remember as a kid, Go Dog Go was my first book that I read, quote unquote.
Hmm.
But I didn't read it, I just memorized it.
Yeah.
I knew every single word and then just could follow along, but I was never doing DOG. It was just that's dog, that's this, that's that. So maybe, yeah.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed books. As a kid, it was always something. You don't always have a lot of control when you're a kid in the
Mhm.
environment you're in, but if you can pick up a book and you can get lost in a world, it doesn't matter where you are, who you're with, you're going to be fully entertained, you know? So that was kind of a fun thing for me to do as a kid, a way to keep myself entertained.
Yeah. And then what's dysgraphia for you?
That's that handwriting piece
Hmm.
where in school, you sit and you look at someone else's desk, and I don't know if you were the neat handwriting person, but I just feel like, wow, it's like printed calligraphy. Like, what is this? Is amazing. And then mine just unreadable, you
Yeah.
know. In college, you have to turn in blue books for writing some of the humanities stuff that I did. And every time I handed that blue book in, I'm just like, okay, if you need me to translate, I don't mind. Just take a look. Let me know if you can. I tried my best. But trying to get your thoughts out there. The clock is ticking. You got to fill up the whole.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, luckily they were pretty good about it. Yeah, I got lucky that way because I didn't know. So it'd have been
Yeah.
nice to have some accommodations. Like I could just type it instead
Hmm.
because less issues there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my oldest, he's 19, he's in school to become a teacher. He has the best teacher handwriting. Like it's like, oh, a teacher wrote this. That's exactly what it looks like. Meanwhile, my handwriting, if I want anyone to be else to be able to read it, I can read it. So if I look at my post-it note right here, I can read what's on it. Most other people aren't going to be able to read that. My kids might be able to at this point. They might be able to make it out a little bit, but yeah, it's not the neatest, but I can read it. Like I know what I wrote.
That's the important part,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's your own little secret encrypted message to yourself, which is great. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh, that's what I need to do. I just need to tell them I'm writing in code.
Yeah.
Oh, then they'll
It's
let me
your
get
own
away with it.
shorthand.
Yeah. Now, you worked with a lot of these higher up folks in companies, and what's the difference between ADHD and just being disorganized, or what did you see the difference between folks who had an actual diagnosis and then some of the behaviors that you were seeing that maybe weren't ADHD but were common?
Yeah. A lot of the time, that's just not something I can do.
Mm.
I've tried, and it seems to be impossible. I don't know how other people. It's a mystery that it can be done. Is kind of somehow it would present in those sessions. Other times it would present as like being very embarrassed and ashamed to even admit it. Like it was
Mm.
like, so taboo that if anybody knew that, they would be found out, that they don't deserve their position, their title, the resources that are at their disposal to help support whatever the mission is for that organization. And so it felt like it was very shameful and scary and
Yeah.
even intimidating to mention it even in that type of a setting where we're there to help support and figure out how to make it a little bit easier to be them when they're doing this challenging work. And so it was really interesting to hear the same things from people with formal diagnosis. And they're like, yeah, it's just kind of been with me my whole life. And like, it's something I try to figure out and it slows me down and it's tough. And then other people would be like unaware and deeply affected by it. And so the shame intensity for people that hadn't received a diagnosis at a younger age was really high
Mm.
because they just thought this was something that they were personally terrible at and that they're
Yeah.
just a no good, very bad person because they didn't have a frame or a label or a lens to kind of make sense of those differences.
Yeah, that I guess not having the label sometimes is more difficult. I was talking about just recently getting my son diagnosed with Tourette's syndrome when he was 5. So this was in 2019, right before COVID, and it was one of those that I sought out a diagnosis because his father was punishing him for things that I was certain were out of his control. I was like, there's no way, A, he's doing this on purpose. B, there's no way he can control it. Like, if you're with him long enough, you're going to understand that. And so I sought out that diagnosis, and then it became very easy to defend what I was saying and go, look, I found the best neurologist in the city. I took him within 5 minutes. He was like, here's what's going on. And so it became a lot easier to go, well, he can't control these ticks in his hands, actually. He spilt his milk, not on purpose, I promise. You know, could there be a little spite in there? Maybe, but he was 5, so probably not. But yeah, I mean, having that in there sometimes can be a little bit of relief. Did you find relief in that, or did it stir up something a little harder for you when you got your diagnosis?
There was relief for sure. You know, hey, okay. And then there's hope. Oh, what are we going to do now? Great. And then there's also a lot of grief because there's, oh, had I known this earlier, oh my gosh, you know, and you can beat yourself up with that because had I known that earlier, life would have looked a lot different. And that could have been helpful and probably healthier for me and everyone else around me as well. But it was my experience. I learned from it. You know, I learned a lot of hard lessons many times for them just to get, you know, beaten in there. So now they're set for life. um, I don't know if learning needs to be as hard as that. I hope that other people can save themselves from that and avoid it if they can. I do think there's some idea that, oh, if I have this label young and I'm getting treatment for it, even like medication, a lot of parents are concerned that they're giving this very powerful stimulant to such a young child that feels intimidating for a lot of people. And I'm not here to make decisions for them. They are not my child. That is their responsibility, and it's there. But there's so much information about the different types of treatments, whether it's medication or some other supportive things. Being aware of what's helpful and then what's appropriate age-wise developmentally for that child, and then what is a fair expectation given this frame of reference. We can take the label out of it. There's a lot of people that don't really enjoy the history of the psychiatric condition.
Yeah.
And I can understand that, right? It's every history's pretty torrid when you go back and look through it. So there's some bad chapters for everything. And they're all very valid reasons for that. But in there, it's that idea of, well, okay, if it is a lens and it is a model and it highlights these uniquenesses, how can we try to, now we know that, how can we accommodate them? And that I think is the most important part, is like figuring out, okay, this is real. This is how it is. What do we do now in a way that creates as much like hope, effectiveness, you know, healthiness, and hopefully maybe some healing, or saving some people from having to do some healing work later because they did have those supports when they needed them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the accommodations piece when you're younger is a big one for a lot of people. And my oldest he just went through the process. He's in college, and so he just went through the process of getting his own accommodations and making sure that he was going to have what he needed for his first year at college. And he'll have to go through it whenever it comes around again, but now he's done it once. So that can be pretty intimidating to go, okay, well, as an adult, I have to figure out, if you've never done it as an adult before, you know, you have to figure out how to go through and go, well, what accommodations would be helpful? Which ones could help me? And then sometimes it's trial and error. I know for my youngest, we have, you know, he's got the plans and everything through school. And he does have ADHD, but we cover everything under a Tourette's diagnosis because at the time, at least in 2019, his neurologist felt like the stigma was pretty high still for ADHD. And you get that label on you, and then teachers are treating you a little bit differently. But with his accommodations, we're covering everything under Tourette's. And every time there's been an issue at school, I've gone, okay, well, where was he sitting in your classroom? At the back? Right. Is he somewhere where he can stand up? No? Right. Like, there are reasons for them. And so I think impressing on to people that the accommodations aren't just things. They're not just for funsies. Like, they actually are helpful and they do some different things for different people. I think that's a big thing that you can get through once you have that diagnosis and once you have figured out kind of those accommodations. But
Yeah. And in a lot of classroom settings, it's kind of based what seems like an authoritarian model where it's like,
Yeah.
follow these rules, and I'm sure that helps with compliance of getting a lot of people in a very small space moving through it, but it's definitely not tied to their individual performance, strengths, or weaknesses. It's not an individualized strategy. It's a one size fits somebody kind of strategy. And I think in the 50s, in the Industrial Revolution, if every screw is the exact same size for every nut, and we know what that is, we get an economies of scale there. That's pretty impressive. And I'm sure that's true for education too, but now we're moving away from that. Even with medicine, we're not doing one treatment for all people. We're saying, oh, this range of treatments might be more helpful versus these based
Mm-hmm.
upon what we know so far. And I think education might be following suit. I don't know if it's happening on what level, but I do think that parents are noticing this. They're reflecting on their own experience and they're trying to create a different one for their children. And I do think that's where a lot of the late diagnosed ADHD is coming from, is from people having their kids going through and they're like, oh, okay, what are we going to do about this? And I do think that maybe there's better options for, people out there that make it a little bit more personalized for them. But there is that model of do it this way, one size fits everybody. And if you're out of that, somehow you're being like rebellious or you're
Mm-hmm.
being, obstinate or defiant. And really it's just, no, I need to move. Otherwise my brain's not going to work. I need to wiggle so I can listen to your math lesson. It's so
Yes.
dry and boring. Yeah. With the advent of virtual education, it's really interesting. I've had I'm always a student, and so I'm taking some courses now, and I'm able to press like fast forward and rewind.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of just like at the one pace from the teacher at their own lecture, oh, it's so hard to engage with. And then I tune out, and now I'm gone. I can't rewind. I can't take my notes. I can't read my notes. I can
Yeah.
probably play back a recorder. But now with it's recorded, hey, I got subtitles on there. I can read the text if I need to. I can press fast forward. I can slow it down. I can repeat it. It's almost like the student's in control versus the teacher now when you're in that type of environment. And it seems to be able to make it easier for people, especially with attentional differences, to be able to absorb the material a little bit better. If not through repetition, if nothing else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Just having that access to it. I'm excited for my oldest to become a teacher, especially having gone, because he's seen his brother growing up and he's been in his own self growing up as well. And I think he wants to teach 4th to 8th grade English. And
Mhm.
so he'll be in elementary schools. And I'm excited to see how he handles kids with these different accommodations and stuff. And he's excited about it too. Fortunately, he's also excited about it. So he always says, think about what it would have been like if I'd had a teacher like me in the classroom. So I'm excited for him and he's excited for him, except for the money part. That's not as exciting, but but he knows that what he's getting in for.
Yeah, that's a different issue altogether, right? I do
It
think that
is.
if teachers were higher paid, it would be a better world.
Agree.
But
Absolutely agree. We have a lot of teachers in my family, and that's one of the things I had him talk to all of the, well, not maybe not all of the teachers, but as many of the teachers as I could find in our family, because there's a lot. And that's one of the things that they were just always like, it's really a passion. It's really about loving the job and loving what you're doing, and it's less about the money. And I'm like, yeah, but the world runs on money, so can we just pay our teachers more? That'd be great. I think it'd be awesome.
yeah, it
Uh,
would be. And there's a few states that are trying to boost the
yeah,
wages of teachers. I think Washington State's trying to be a little bit more progressive with that, which is great. Be interesting to see how their education system performs and their test scores perform over the next few years. It's kind of a fun experiment.
yeah,
But even tying those changes in outcome to compensation, I feel like is too, cut and dry, not enough nuance in there. So
yeah.
we'll see. Yeah.
I'm excited and worried also at the same time. But we'll see where it goes. So we talked about the high functioning and masking. What does it cost someone to be high functioning and masking all the time?
Yeah. I think there's two things that it costs. One, if you're wearing a mask and you're performing well, it rewards you to keep wearing the mask. There's like a
Mm,
built in incentive. Oh, it's working. So you do more of it. And I think people do that professionally, personally, interpersonally. They do it with family, they do it with friends. And then at a certain point, there's like this, oh, I'm good at this. Okay, this feels good. We like to be good at things, whatever the thing is. We want to be
Right.
good at it, right? That's enjoyable. It feels good. But then you get too good at it, and then it feels like people are responding to that mask. And the more that mask is not who you are, the bigger the gap is there, the bigger that mismatch, the more alienated and isolated you end up being in every single one of your interactions of your life, to the point where you feel like you're not even in it. It's this other thing, this persona over there that has nothing to do with who you are. And that's a pretty dangerous environment to be in. And all the success you've built on feels like it requires that mask. Oh, so now we're talking about functioning, keeping a roof over your head, bills paid. If you want to set it down and take a break or try to redesign it or, approach it, the world without it, it's a bigger burden than it sounds like, because everything you've done for however long you've been putting it on is done through that context. So taking it off and starting over is a pretty daunting task for a lot of people. And maybe not even the goal per se, but being able to make sure that that persona and who you are get closer together in a way that's actually tangible is often usually helpful. And then enough of the time people can kind of let the mask down more often, at least.
Yeah. Is that something that the folks that you work with on a regular basis, do they have a hard time with either admitting that they are super masking, or that they are having a hard time putting it down, or having a hard time maintaining it?
They're so good at it.
Hmm.
They're proud of being good at it. That it's a skill and a strength that they've used, and they've used it successfully to create success that a lot of people are envious of. So why would you want to put it down, even if it is harmful to you? It's so, and even if you think, oh, it might be better, there's also this idea of self-esteem. Is me without the mask actually worth all of that effort? And the answer sometimes doesn't feel like an emotional yes. It feels like, I don't know. How would I know? I've never known that. In fact, it's only been this mask. So that also presents another challenge there. So some people have been wearing it for so long, and they're so good at it, they're almost like a fish in water. They don't know they're wet. And it's only until things start breaking, which sometimes
Mm,
shows up at a certain level of success or a certain level of functioning, just their coping mechanisms no longer keeping pace with the effort.
yeah. So you work within this framework, and one of the things that you talk about is this assess, accommodate, and align. So can you walk us through that and explain it for somebody who's never heard of it?
Yeah, there's so many things that help improve people's well-beings. Like, and it's so unique to them. So how do you not try to do a one size fits somebody
Right.
to an actually helpful, supportive environment? And there's a couple things that I think are interesting. If you design for that middle of the bell curve, right, you're essentially ostracizing the people that are at the extremes. But if you design for the people at the extremes, you end up accommodating everybody there in the center. And so if you're going to have a group of people and you're going to try to provide some type of something for them, maybe we're better served by designing for these extremes out here. And then everything in the center gets a little bit easier to navigate. And so the idea with that is, how do we make sense of all of the things that are underneath this bell curve for all the different types of people? Ugh, that is a daunting task. So if we don't know what it is, then we're in trouble. We don't know where to start. If we know what it is, it makes it a little bit easier to set an intention in a direction. If we then know what actually has worked for them as best as it has in other areas, then it makes it a lot easier to do more of that. And then if we can be intentional about that, and we have some freedom and some privilege to be able to choose what we want to do next in our life, we can kind of create a rubric of, well, would this option or this one be more or less aligned with what I need to be okay? Would I have to mask more? How much would that cost me? Is it worth it? And we can be really intentional about those decisions, and really brutal and like honest about yes or no on those things if we're aware of it. And so it starts with that assessment piece. And then we go into accommodation. Okay, so this is your unique things that you need. Great. How are we getting those met now? How can we be, better about that? What would be easier about it, actually? And then from there, okay, now that we're in this better place, it feels a little bit easier, a little healthier. What can we do now? What is now in our control or our sphere of influence that we can kind of change and adapt with the way you work, so that way you can do your best work instead of giving up your entire well-being to be able to just get through the day at work.
Yeah. That just kind of the personalization of it. Do you find that it's easy to do? Is that a difficult process to get through with each individual? Obviously, since it's not, one size fits all, it's unique every time, but is it difficult to go through that with somebody?
I think it's a blast for me. You
Yeah.
know, you'd have to ask them, but I'm really thoroughly enjoying the process because when you meet someone, you get a chance to be like, okay, what's going on? Where are all the, where are the bottlenecks in this thing that you're working on? Okay. And so the model's been kind of built out from all of these interactions with these people that have proven to be helpful and useful and effective. And I really love the freedom of it to be able to move from one to another because obviously I have ADHD. And so it'd be so confining if it was just one thing and that's it
Mhm.
forever. So it's very rewarding for me to be able to sit down, look with someone with curiosity and compassion about what's actually showing up and then get some real clarity about it instead of just trying to get through. Let's be way more intentional and direct with this. Let's put our glasses on and look at everything clearly, and compassionately, so that way we can actually make changes in a way that's helpful, instead of like shaming and blaming people for living the best they can. How do we just make it easier to be them so they don't need to be in this state all the time?
Yeah. I don't know that I would have put it together that like not only is it better to assess an individual on an individual basis and kind of do what you can for that specific person, but also for you as someone with ADHD, it's a lot easier slash better to do it that way. I don't know that I ever would have connected those dots, so I love it. That's fantastic.
And there's always a little mystery to solve too, like, oh, that's
Hmm.
new and interesting and different. And then, off to the races. Super
Yeah.
excited for that, right?
Yeah. So, how does clinical hypnotherapy fit into executive coaching? That's not always something that people expect.
It's definitely not. Yeah. So some people reach out because they're primarily interested in hypnotherapy. And then we do some health and wellness coaching, some executive coaching, it's business focused. And it's really fun because they're like, oh my gosh, we get to do this like on a conscious level and then we get to do it on a subconscious level. And then what's really interesting for me is that's just in the mind and the body kind of interaction. But our nervous system is like a whole, if we're going to try to make changes in our ability to understand new information, new insights, new wisdoms, if we're in a state of distress, there's no way to do that. Our body, our mind is primed for reaction and reactivity. It's pulling that hand away from the hot pan to protect you from getting burned because you've been burned before. And so if you're in a heightened state where there's danger and threats there, it's impossible to learn something new. It's not
Hmm.
impossible. It's really challenging and it's not fun. And it's way more effort than it's worth. And so my favorite part about working with people is being able to help them learn how they can get into a regulated nervous system because once they're in that state, oh, there's so much more capacity for everything. But then to be able to kind of take that like larger view and begin to be like, okay, what is worth developing even more here? What are these strengths that we can lean even more into? If we go into that to start and they're dysregulated, not only is it a waste of their time and money, it's also harmful to be doing that. Because
Yeah.
if you're there feeling shame, blame, guilt, and fear, and you're analyzing your life, guess what you're going to find is a whole lot of evidence of why you're feeling shame, blame, guilt, and fear. And that's actually harmful for people. So it's challenging. We got to make sure that we get that regulation piece there. So then we can kind of relate and get to know each other. And then we can kind of do the reasoning of like, oh, okay, now let's put this framework together in a way that's helpful for 'em.
Yeah. And then, so you said sometimes they come for the hypnotherapy. How do you do it the opposite way? If they're not there for hypnotherapy, does hypnotherapy always come in, or is it something that it's just individual basis, or you kind of are like, hey, also we could do, or how does that work?
There are lots of interventions that are helpful for people. Hypnotherapy is one of them.
Yeah.
So if people are interested or curious and they enjoy our working relationship, our therapeutic relationship, then, maybe it's the safest place to try if that's something they're interested in. If they're not, great. It is a tool.
Hmm.
There's so many tools out there. You're not going to love them all. There's so many I don't like. Sometimes the ones I don't like are the ones I need, but hey, what are you going to do there? But no, it's definitely client driven. Whatever is best for them, and they're in control of that situation. So these are suggestions and options. Which ones do we want to try to prioritize? Which ones seem a natural fit and are most curious and interest for you? Let's start with those. Sometimes it's hypnotherapy, sometimes it's not. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't personally have an emotional stance one way or the other. I'm just happy to be there working with them one way or another. So,
Yeah. No, I think having it as like a just a tool. Have you had folks who are, I guess, curious about it but don't necessarily want to do it, so they just want to talk about it?
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So what is that? Let's talk, And that's kind of fun for me actually, because I think we have a misconception of what hypnosis is,
Hmm.
because most of our experience is like either from movies or like stage shows. So you're either like watching someone be ridiculous, or you're watching something horrific probably on the movie.
Yeah.
And people feel really kind of squeamish about what they think hypnosis is, where it's this power of someone over them.
Right.
And if you're a person who, really values your strength and your ability to kind of control outcomes, and you feel like that's a strength of yours, that would be even more intimidating if that's what hypnotherapy is. But the good news is it's not that. It's completely different. I think about like a personal trainer. You go to the gym, you have a goal in mind. Great. They're going to design a program so the movements you do get you closer to the results you're looking for. So
Hmm.
that way you're not just getting sweaty and like wasting time. 6 months later, you're like, great. I'm still not even closer to whatever the heck I went in for in the first place. And so they also make it fun when you're there, right? They help you pick up the weights, kind of move around. But the one thing they can't do is actually do the resistance training for you.
Yeah.
You have to do that part yourself. And hypnosis is the exact same thing. All hypnosis is self-hypnosis. So really my job as a hypnotherapist is to make sure when we're there in that state, that what we're doing is helpful and healing for them based upon what they've said consciously to us. And so they're already driving that. We're just reinforcing it to the subconscious when they're in that relaxed state. So that way they can learn different. Because if we're in the presence of something that feels threatening on any level, but we're in a relaxed state, our body kind of changes that association and goes, oh, that must not be as threatening as we thought. Interesting. Okay, well, what else can we do? What new information is there? And that's when we kind of support them with those stories of those positive experiences. So it makes it even easier. And it's true because they lived it, they know it, they felt it. And so it makes it much easier for them to be able to recall it. But then now consciously, that part, that circuitry is there even in those threatening situations. So it's not just pull your hand out of the fire. It's okay, that's an option. What else? And it
Hmm.
makes it easier to kind of make sure those what else's are helpful and healthy. Get them closer to their goal.
Yeah. I think that a lot of folks have quite a few misunderstandings about hypnotherapy and what it is and what it's for, what it's useful for as well.
Yeah. My favorite is people, so they always, not always, often. So no chicken clucking, right? It's like the like throwaway joke.
Yes.
And I'm like, no, not unless if you want to,
If you
I
want.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, not my job, not my goal.
Hmm.
Um, but there is a little bit of a magic trick and illusion that happens in hypnosis shows, where there's people that are the class clowns. They want to be on stage having people
Yeah.
laugh at them because they love that feeling. So they're just asking for those volunteers. And then hypnosis is such a normal, natural state of our consciousness that we drift in and out of it multiple times throughout a day, at least waking and sleeping. But if you've ever been on a long drive and you get to your destination, you're like, oh my gosh,
How'd I get here?
how'd I get here? I'm so glad I'm here. Excellent. Whew, I wasn't paying attention.
Yep.
That's a state of hypnosis called highway hypnosis. It's one of the most common ones. But if you're ever laughing and crying at a story, if you're reading a fictional book and you're absorbed in it and something turning happens and it raises that emotion in you, that's also a state of hypnosis. Your body's having an involuntary physiological reaction to something that you know is imaginary, that you
Yeah.
consciously know is imaginary, in a full fiction of creation in your own subconscious. And your body's responding as if it's real in that moment. Sometimes that happens at commercials. Sometimes that happens when you're watching a TV show. Sometimes it's listening to music, but all those are states of hypnosis. So when that hypnotist asks for the class clowns, gets them all up on stage, say 30 people show up, he gives them all a command. If they follow it, those are the people that are already in that state. And so he
Yeah.
just dismisses everybody else off. So it looks like he did something to them. But he didn't. He just, nice selection bias there for himself,
Yeah.
herself. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's on my other water bottle, but one of my water bottles has a sticker that says crying over emotional care or emotional over fictional characters or crying over fictional characters. I get emotional. My kids will tell you I'm an emotional person. They're like, "What are you crying about now? Did you see a puppy on Reddit?" I'm like, yes. But I do. I get very emotional over books that are, and like I said, I don't usually read nonfiction, so it's definitely
Right.
fiction. I've never considered that that's kind of a form of hypnosis there. That's an interesting way to describe that.
That's why books are always better than the movies, because you're the casting director, you're the costume
Hmm.
designer, you're the set designer, you know, you're the be all end all with that creative vision. It's specifically catered to your own imagination. No
Yeah.
one can replicate that. So when you get in the movie theater, you're like, oh, it's kind of like a C-rate version of what I had in here. So I
Hmm.
guess it's okay. Unless
Yeah.
it's your favorite, whatever, actor and you're like, you know,
Yeah.
performance.
Yeah, the worst thing is you get halfway through a book and then they mention the color of the hair again and you're like, "No, no, no. They had brown hair in my head and now you're telling me that they're blonde." And then you go back and you check and oh no, they were blonde from the beginning. Oops.
So,
uh,
as a hypnotherapist, that is some of the awareness that the therapist is providing when they're in there, because they're providing, I wasn't there when they were telling me these stories.
mhm.
So reflecting it back to them. Artfully vague is the term that we talk about.
Yeah.
So, it's not a golden stairwell, it's a stairwell. I wonder what color that stairwell is,
Hmm.
and then your brain answers, right?
Yeah, that's neat. So you also talk about the boom and bust cycle. Can you describe that for somebody who's never heard it named that way?
Yeah, it's really just when you have that energy and you're like, I'm going to go do everything. And then you do as much as you can. It's never enough. And then you don't have any energy left. And so you crash.
Yeah.
Lots of people have this in projects. Maybe they're trying to get through their entire inbox that day. Maybe they're trying to organize for a move. Maybe it's doing laundry. Maybe it's doing dishes. Maybe it's a big project at work. Maybe it's a tough conversation with a partner or a colleague. But we kind of have this idea of like overzealousness, and then it peters out. Because a lot of people are using um, shame and blame and kind of like grit to get started, which is great if you're on mile 18 of a marathon and you need to get to mile 18.5. Okay. But if that's all you ever have, they say, oh, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. I'm like, yeah, it's your life. It's every day, all day. So this conversation you have with yourself is never going to stop. How it
Yeah.
sounds to you is really important. And if you're using that shame, blame, guilt, and fear, you're only going to get so far. And laundry and dishes are never going to be done.
Never.
So, never, ever. I mean, you could eat out every meal, never have, your own plates. You could wear the same clothes every day, ever never wash them. Then you could probably not have laundry or dishes. But outside of those,
Yeah,
yeah.
I laundry and dishes are the two things that we're like, we just did these. Can we can we not have to do them right now? But so this boom and bust cycle, is it describing when you run out of the energy in the middle of a task, or is the bust part, maybe you completed the task and now you're like, now I have nothing left in the tank for literally anything else in my day. Is it
Yeah.
or is it both?
Both depends. Yeah, it depends on how big that project is and your skill at it and the outcome of it needing done and how well resourced you are in that moment. You know, you might have all the intentions of doing it, but if you didn't get good sleep and you don't have food in your system, the work you're putting into whatever that project may be may not be up to quality to get it across the line, right? So how can we fill up that tank more, not use that shame, blame, guilt, and fear for motivation, and then recognize that, okay, I don't necessarily need to do all the dishes because I can't pre-wash dishes that aren't dirty, essentially. I'm just doing something. And that part is all there is because it's never done. It's an ongoing
Mhm.
project forever. So thinking about it as done or not done, in or out, accomplished, not accomplished, is like such a strange binary for these things that are an everyday part of your life. You always have to eat, you gotta go to the bathroom, you gotta breathe. There's so many things that are like that to be like, oh, I've done that. No, you haven't. You're doing it. Did you do
Mhm.
enough of it today to be okay for tomorrow? Were you kind enough to your future self? Or are you being kind to your past self because you kind of withheld some support that they needed to get through it, and now you're making up that time in this moment? Where are we at on that cycle? But if we don't pay attention to those things, and we feel like it's all or nothing, maybe we get the project done and then we crash. Maybe we don't.
Yeah. Is it the same or is it different if you have either diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD when it comes to burnout versus somebody without it?
So burnout is a big mismatch between what someone needs to do their job well and how they're able to do their job, right? Some of those are resources of the organization and the position, and sometimes that changes. But oftentimes, how much autonomy you have and how you choose to do your work makes a big part of it. For someone who has ADHD, they have executive functioning differences. So if there's one way of expectation to be and they don't happen to fit that perfectly, they're going to have I don't know what the exact percentage is, but it's probable and reasonable to assume that they're going to have burnout rates at a higher percentage than the general population that doesn't have any type of neurodevelopmental difference, or any person that's a perfect fit for their position. The bigger that gap is, the more burnout's going to ensue. And burnout doesn't happen just because, it's not a good fit. It happens because you're doing the job and it's not a good fit.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that burnout's something that in my field, I'm in the proposal management field, and it's something that we experience a lot of we have a lot of folks who hit a wall and they're just like, that I'm never doing this job anymore ever again. It's awful and terrible. And why does anyone do it? And then it's like, okay, well, bye. I guess good luck finding something that doesn't burn you out. But then there are also people who've done it for 25 years, and it's a fit for them. It's a fit for their skill set. And I think that figuring out if it's a fit for your skill set is probably easier without any type of neurodivergence, but I'm not sure that I've met anyone in my field who doesn't have some type of neurodivergence, to be honest. But it definitely is a challenge to go, is this the right job for me versus this is the job that's available and it's the job that I need to support my life. That's a hard one.
Well, and that's a fit right there. That is a goodness of fit, right? And unfortunately, we only have so many options. And when you're choosing a career, choosing there is kind of a euphemism. It's easier to choose what cereal you're going to have or toilet paper you're going to have. It's easier to choose what type of non-watered beverage you're going to have to hydrate yourself that day. Career feels a little bit different because of the obstacles that are in place in there and the need and how great the need is to be able to have a paycheck so you can have access to a roof over your head, toilet paper in your closet, and cereal in your cabinet. And so when we talk about choice there, we're really only talking to a percentage of the population when we do that,
Yeah.
which is fine. I think it's important for them to recognize that that is something that's valuable and that they should be able to use that discernment because they have an option to be able to exercise that in a way that a lot of people don't. And so being able to appreciate that and then maximize it for themselves is really important.
Yeah.
Because without that, it's your life and it's going to be challenging. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Can trauma or even burnout mimic ADHD symptoms closely enough to get misdiagnosed?
Yes. Absolutely. Without a doubt. Yeah. Anytime you're under duress of any kind, your executive functioning strengths are going to diminish greatly. That doesn't matter if it's just a few hours of missed sleep or if you're going through, a position change, a move, you're in a motor vehicle accident, one of your loved ones isn't feeling well. You think you might lose your job. All of these things are normal things that people experience all day, every day that create a stress response that as that challenge is ongoing, they don't get a chance to fully come back down into relaxation. The longer they're in that state for, the more it's going to compromise their executive functions. The more it's going to mimic and look synonymous with ADHD.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the times people will do kind of self-diagnosis type things, and it's like, Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
If you can find an accommodation out of that that helps you because you feel like you're aligned with this and something happens to work with you, but then I always wonder if it's something else though. What if there's something that better? What if there's something better that could help you if you had something that was actually the right thing for whatever it is you're going through? Um, but yeah, it's a rough thing to try and talk to somebody about if they're already down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. And there are labels that feel like they're easy to ascribe to sometimes.
Hmm.
And ADHD sometimes is an easier one for people than some of the other labels that people, can seek a diagnosis for. And sometimes that one feels too strong. They're like, no, I'm just like kind of a go with the flow person. It's fine. It's just who I am. And like, none of that's right or wrong because it's actually about making it easier for them to show up and engage in a healthy way in their own life. Those are all good things. The question, your point is like, is it the best thing?
Yeah.
And maybe that description of that label is the best thing for them now. And they're on this journey. And we'll see how long and where it goes. And I've been around long enough on social media to see people kind of go through this where they're like, oh, guys, hey, because we have all these crazy parasocial relationships with people now. And then 3 months later, you're like, oh my gosh, it wasn't that. It was this thing. Oh my gosh, it wasn't that. It was this thing. And you just kind of can follow this along. And part of me cringes when I see that because I'm like, oh my gosh, they have to like rechange their. And then part of me is also like, wow, that's kind of cool that they're able to like share their journey about the complicated nuances of this thing and how subtle and different it can be and share
Hmm.
that example for the rest of us that aren't willing to be like, hey, look at me, guys. This is my story. That's not for everybody. So I'm glad we get to see some of those examples. And, this label is helpful. Is it the most helpful? I don't know. How do we find out?
Yeah. Yeah, no, the everyone sharing their story in whatever way they're comfortable with on social media. There's good and there's bad. There's good and there's bad about that. Uh, Most
Yeah.
definitely. My oldest will take me through some of the stuff that he's seeing online with, oh my gosh, did you hear this latest thing about this creator and da, 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 da," and at the same time I'm looking at my youngest and going, I might never get you a phone. I might just never get you a smartphone. You're gonna have a dumb phone like I had. Uh, but yeah, it's interesting to go through and see people's journeys if they continue to share the journey, because sometimes they just get to a point and they stop and you kind of don't get to know what happened. To your point with the parasocial relationships, we feel like we're entitled to that, and we're absolutely not.
Yeah. You're like,
Uh,
huh, okay. And it's
yeah,
kind of fun to think about. Well,
yeah.
did this happen? Why did they stop posting?
Hmm.
Anyway,
Yeah.
another mystery to solve there. Right.
If somebody can't go get a diagnosis, though, is there a self assessment tool or a framework to help folks start understanding their own brain that you would recommend?
Yeah, there's a ton of them out there. Um, there's the ESS or ESQ, Executive Strengths Questionnaire. It's for adults. It's a screener, and it basically does not create the impression of a diagnosis. It talks about, hey, here's a bunch of executive functioning strengths. Which one are yours? Which are the high ones? Which are the middle ones? Which are the not, you know, high ones, whatever you want to call those. And then the interesting part is that you can get a little bit more intentional because you're like, okay, let's say the task that I'm having a bottleneck issue with is whatever. What shows up? What do I usually use to get this done? And what's it cost me? And is there something else? And look at all these cool strengths I have, these other five. Oh, can I use those to get this challenging task done? And so that's kind of how we get to think about accommodating that individual unique person without labels, without a diagnosis, without needing to treat a disorder or a disease. We're just trying to increase people's well-being and make sure that their life is more enjoyable, healthy, and helpful for them. And so, we don't necessarily need to know those labels. If someone has them, it makes it a little bit easier for them and to be
Yeah.
very clear about it, right? But even with it, it's just a jumping off point. It's like, oh, okay, we're using this lens to look at this thing through. It's not the be all end all because there's no like printout. Okay, here, go do this now. It might be like, hey, here's some things that might be worth trying. Which one is interesting for you? Did it work or not? Right. And so it's that kind of series of experiences and experiments.
I think it's even if you do go and get a diagnosis, I still feel like a lot of the accommodations probably should be here's something to try instead of here's a list of, because my oldest, whenever he went to college and they were like, here's a list, okay, you have this, here's a list of accommodations you can say that you need, or your doctor can say that you need. And it's like, well, it's not that he needs all of them, or maybe he does need all of them, but what if there's something else? What if there's something else that could be helpful? Why is it just this one menu for people to choose from? So I
Yeah.
yeah.
Russell Barkley has it feels like he's doing a stand-up bit, right? So big researcher for ADHD for a long time. He's retired now. But he's like accommodations for people with ADHD, more time on tests. He's not saying that that isn't helpful for some people, but more time on assignments. Okay, it's due on Wednesday. No, it's not. It's due 2 weeks from now. Okay, well, guess what? I'm not going to get started until 2 weeks from now.
Right.
You almost need the assignment moved up, and then you cram, get it done, and then they're like, no, no, just kidding. It's actually due 2 days from now. You go. That would be a helpful accommodation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Some fake deadlines.
In the short run. Yeah. But you can't know they're fake. Otherwise, it doesn't work. Right?
Yes.
Yeah. But that's only
Randomly
for
fake
tasks that,
deadlines, but then that's not
yeah,
good
right,
either.
yeah. But even then, it creates that sense of urgency to get action, which is great. It's a tool. It's worth using. Sometimes we wouldn't get anything done if it wasn't there. But if that's the only tool that people have access to, that's burnout right there. If you're just using urgency to get through your day or your week or the project, it's just, I'm not going to say it's inevitable, but it's highly likely.
Yeah. Is there a sign that someone should stop pushing through and actually get evaluated for a formal diagnosis?
Yeah. I think the easiest way is to see what your healthcare is, what your general practitioner says. But another way is a lot of times these are heritable traits. So if you look around and it doesn't feel like it's so unique to you, it looks like you kind of see it reflected in your larger family. That might be a clue that it's more than just your personal personality traits, your own temperament. It might be something else that's going on in addition to whatever that is. But then you get to know, oh, is this or is this me? Which part is this? Which part is that? And it's kind of fun to parse a little bit of that out. It can be overwhelming too when you're first going through that process.
Yeah, I mean, well, and it kind of depends on your view at the time too. It might be fun today and it might be overwhelming tomorrow, or vice versa. Or it might just always be fun, or it might just always be overwhelming. Everybody's going to react a little bit differently.
Well, and even sometimes in the same moment, you're having two different emotions. I remember the first time before I decided to take medication that had been prescribed for me for treatment for ADHD, here I am, 40 years old, having lived my whole life and not taking this medication. And that's not to say that I hadn't used a lot of other chemicals and substances to try to create a feeling of normalcy. It just wasn't ever something that was prescribed and expected. And so there was something very exciting, encouraging, hopeful, and also very like, oh, wait, forever now? Is that really? And well, it's not all or nothing. Also, it's not just because you said yes today doesn't mean you have to say yes forever after that. So even that is kind of those thinking traps that you often fall into. And so it's just an experiment. Let's see what happens. Not that there's not costs to doing psychological experiments with the help of a doctor that it's by the prescription.
Yes.
There's still some problems that can show up from that. But are you worth caring for and figuring it out? And if not this, how else are we going to care for you, right? Sure, that doesn't need to be the only option, and it's not, but what else are we going to do?
Yeah. So this question was sent in ahead of time. Does ADHD look different in women versus men, especially for a late diagnosis?
Probably. We don't do enough studies on women in general, let alone women's issues in general. Let alone how medication helps or harms depending on where we are in that study. There's a reason why most mice that we study are men, because there is no ovulation, there is no change in hormone cycles, and neurotransmitters and hormones have a pretty synergistic effect. So I'm certain that it does. We just don't have any real solid evidence to be like, absolutely, and here's what it is, and here's what we need to do. We have general ideas and like more research is being done, but it definitely shows up different in my practice. There's a lot more. The burnout happens when the relationships in that person's life are getting challenged versus when it's someone who's, historically male. they're in a position where they're like, oh, I can't do this anymore. Like my coping mechanisms aren't working. Like whatever I'm doing to get by isn't enough. And I can't do more of that. It's dangerous. So now I need to do something else. And then on the other side, it feels like my relationships are not okay. They are not healthy or supportive for me. I feel like I'm failing other people. And so I'm not okay with that. And so I do think that's really interesting because that seems to be not always gender based, but often.
Yeah. Yeah, the point about women not being studied enough is that's such an understatement. I was just talking about the reasons that they have done or that they've come out and said like starting on estrogen earlier is actually preventive when it comes to some cancers versus what they used to say is that it can cause some cancers. And it's like, well, yeah, they were looking at women who were postmenopausal whenever they made that determination. And now they're looking at women premenopausal when they're making some of these new determinations. And it's just like, oh, right. How did no one think to do this already? But at least they're doing it now. At least they're starting to try and do things a little differently. That brings me a little bit of hope.
Me too. Yeah. How can we not? This is more than half the population. How do we not have like valid medical interventions for people? What are we doing?
Yeah.
What?
What are we doing?
Like,
I don't have an answer. I wish I did. Is there an accommodation that folks either could or should try in their life with or without a diagnosis or a doctor first?
I will say sleep is the be all end all of well being. If you don't have that, you don't have much. So if you are struggling with sleep, that's probably not going to be an easy, quick solve, but it's probably rewarding for every little bit that helps. It's worth looking into. Yeah.
And when you
So
say
if you
struggling with sleep, do you mean
hmm?
getting a certain number of hours? Is it quality of sleep? What do you mean there?
Yeah, quality, quantity, you know, laying your head down and being able to fall asleep predictably, waking up and going back to sleep, getting the rest your body and your mind need to be able to perform well. Because whatever experience you're having, whether it's chronic pain or, you know, PMDD, if you're not that well rested, it's going to be more severe. You're going to suffer more. If you're in a stressful environment, you're not sleeping well, you're going to be more distressed than you would be otherwise. It's one of the most important and the most effective ways to accommodate any issue you're having. Because if that one's better, the rest of them are a little bit less intense. If that one's worse, they get more intense. And so if you're feeling anxious about something and you got a bad night's sleep, you're going to feel more anxious than if you had gotten a good night's sleep.
Yeah. I know there's lots of recommendations out there for how much you should sleep and all of that. And sleep hygiene is a big topic right now as well, just with, oh, make sure you're not looking at your phone for a certain amount of time. And sometimes it can feel a little bit overwhelming. Is there any guideline that you specifically follow when it comes to sleep?
Yeah, the social jet lag, I think, is the thing that
Mm.
a lot of times gets glossed over. A lot of people are like, oh, sleep hygiene and like make your room pitch black. And it's like all these things that are very consumerist. Buy this cool freaking product and then
Yeah.
you can black out the curtains and cool your bed. And like all of those are helpful. And I'm sure they work for some people. And like they're the thing that tips the scales. And finally, they're like, it's amazing. Good. There are magic bullets out there. Use them all. Whatever works, great. But if you're sleeping in consistently, Monday through Friday, wake up at 7, Saturday, Sunday, you're waking up at 7:30 even, it's almost like you move time zones on your body.
Mm.
And so it takes a while for your body to accommodate that and adjust and then resync everything. All of its predictive enzymes. You know, our mind is so fascinating and so powerful. If you were to imagine a big yellow sour juicy lemon and then you were to cut into it and then take a slice of that and put it into your mouth, even just that image starts creating those salivatory glands where we're getting those enzymes coming out to predict, well, we know when we do that, this is what we have to do to be okay. If we think we're going to wake up at 7 and we wake up at 7:30, there's an effect, and there's a downstream effect on all of your hormone profiles, mental, emotional, physical well-being. That's not to shame anybody for sleeping in. It's if you want to avoid social jet lag, wake up at 7, go to the bathroom, drink a glass of water, lay back down. You've set that circadian clock enough that you're not going to suffer from social jet lag. So if you go to sleep at 3 in the morning because of whatever reason and you still have to get up at 7, get up at 7. If you know you're going to go back and get some sleep, great. Go to the bathroom, drink some water, go lay back down, go back to sleep. At least you've kept that rhythm as much as you can. And that seems to be pretty helpful. Not always able to accommodate if you're traveling a lot, because that's very real. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, then it's like you're taking a nap after you got up and went to the bathroom, and it's separate sleep. It's different sleep.
Separate sleep. It is. It's enough to keep that cue, that biological predictive cue, without the effort of it. Right?
Yeah. Are there any common myths or misunderstandings about ADHD or ADHD accommodations also that you feel like are holding people back from asking for what they need?
Yeah, I think people are embarrassed that they need help.
Mm.
Yeah. I think people who didn't receive the help that they would have liked when they were growing up, that it's hard for them to ask. And if it's not offered, it doesn't feel like it's safe enough to ask for it. And so they just go on doing what they're doing. And so I do think that that's probably the hardest part is if you think it might be a possibility, take the self-screener. If it's a yes, go talk to somebody. If it's a no, great. The quest continues. But I think figuring that out is probably worth the effort.
Mm-hmm.
It can only get better. You can only learn how to accommodate yourself better and what your own unique nervous system needs are. And no one else can actually do that for you. They can do it with you. They can give you ideas. They can help you, but you have to go through it and figure it out. And I think if you're not willing to like raise your hand or even begin to look, that's what stops most people from getting through it. And the sooner you can do that, I would argue the better, but that's just from my unique perspective at 40 being like, oh man, this could have been a whole different story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm selfishly glad that it's your story and that we're here talking about it. I think it's hopefully going to help at least one person. That's what we're here for.
Yeah.
Bite Mark would like to know.
Person, it's worth it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I always say too. Is just if one person is helped by any given conversation that we wind up having, that's what I'm here for. So, Bite Mark would like to know, what is your favorite poem?
I used to like one, but I've changed. I had it memorized for a while. Now I'd have to paraphrase it, but I don't even know who wrote it. It's God is and the beasts are, man partly is and wholly hopes to be. And it's kind of this idea that like what makes us unique from other animals is our ability to be aware of our own awareness. And I think that's kind of cool. I also think it's disingenuous to think that we're not animals and that these other animals also don't have emotions and feelings and social bonds with us even. And that actually I think the dogs might be closer to the example that people want to ascribe God to be than, humans are. I think they're pretty loving, unconditional. So
I agree with that most of the time.
Yeah.
I've got 3 dogs, and I mean, listen, this cat's love is very conditional on treats, 100%. But my dog, especially my dog, we have 3 dogs. One of them is mine.
Yeah.
And it's very clear which one is mine because
Yeah.
he's unconditional. Absolutely. So I agree. They're called man's best friend for a reason.
Yeah. And so because of that now, it's not a poem, but it's a Mark Twain quote where he's like, heaven goes by grace, because if it went by merit, your dog would be there and you wouldn't be. So.
What is your favorite life hack?
Favorite life hack? Besides waking up even on days you're going to sleep in?
Or that can be it.
A lot of people think that they're going to start a new endeavor and they're excited about it. And then they go all in and then they don't, whatever. There's not enough system of feedback around to support them through some of those sticking points. And so that never feels like they're really satisfied with how far they took it, right? Not that they have to be Mozart or Beethoven to be enjoying playing piano or whatever the thing may be. But oftentimes, even like strength training, people are like, oh, I gotta go to the gym and like lift the weights. And sure, I guess. But like, we don't think that to get my teeth clean, I have to go get a root canal every day. We're like, no, you just kind of like do this thing for a little bit and spit and it's okay. You know, it'll be all right. That little bit of effort, that less than 2 minutes or 3 minutes of effort is so impactful for so many tasks. Anything that feels like it's a task. If you just put a timer, so my mom did when she was teaching me how to brush my teeth, you gotta brush it till all the sand's out, and you flip it. If you just put that on and then do whatever the thing is, you'll get enough of it done. Maybe you'll get more motivated. Maybe it'll spark more curiosity. Maybe it'll spark more excitement. But also, if you kind of stop while you still have something in your tank, you'll have more for next time. It's not always true because you have to make sure that your environment supports you by creating those systems so you can put yourself in front of them consistently. You know, putting your shoes in front of the front door, or eyeglasses in front of the door. Multiples of everything. That's my other life hack.
Yes. Yeah, I agree with that one for sure. Yeah, no, I think breaking things down and making them either into smaller tasks or that you can do throughout the day, or giving yourself a timer and going, look, it's only for this long. It doesn't even have to be for very long. If I just have to get up and do 10 squats, I can do 10 squats. That's fine. That's no big deal. If I have to go to the gym and go, all right, well, I'll be done in 2 hours. I don't have 2 hours in my day right now, but I'll be back. And it's you gotta make it as accessible as your day will allow. And everybody's got different levels of accessibility too in their day. So what works for you might not work for me.
Yeah, caring for yourself is a unique task.
Yeah, it is. Well, it is time for the magic moment, and I have a magic wand here. If you could wave this magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception surrounding mental health, what would it be?
That mental health differences are something that we should, ignore. That if we put our head in the sand and we kind of just ignore them, they'll go away. That is absolutely not the case. If anything, they get louder and louder and louder until you do have to look at them. And the longer you wait, the louder they are, the more challenging it'll be. Just because you're not paying attention doesn't mean it goes away. So it's like that gaslight on my car. I'm like, oh, I don't have time to stop and get gas right now. Eventually I'm going to run out. That's okay. Hopefully I got AAA and we'll get me back on the road going or whatever it is. But it's that same thing with mental health. A lot of times people go, oh, it feels really big, intimidating and scary, overwhelming. So it's much easier just to baby bath water it. Nope, it's not there. But that actually doesn't get rid of it. It just means that you're blocking your opportunity to understand it, know it, accommodate it, and then work with it, through it, and around it. So that way you can actually enjoy it instead of whatever the experience is when you're not doing some of those things. And I get that it's a lot of work and it's a lot of emotional labor to be ready to even begin to do that work. So I understand it's not an easy thing. But I hear a lot of people that are, oh, no, it's not about us. It's not about our family. That's not about, nope, it's not that, it's this thing. And I'm a person who likes to know, not know. So it's like counterintuitive to me in the first place, but I can understand why maybe I'm not in the place to handle doing this work. And so I get it, but I do think we'd be better off if hey, it's a real thing. What are we going to do about it? It's just that simple.
Yeah. Well, I feel like if you know, it's a lot better than not knowing, because then you can either do something about it or consciously not do something about it if that is what you choose. But
it's still a choice.
It's still your choice. You have made it your choice, and I feel like there's more control. As someone who loves control, I feel like there's more control in that than in not knowing.
I've been seeing the insulin, not the insulin, the blood glucose monitors, the constant glucose monitors. Mm-hmm. And some people are like, no, I don't want to know what my blood's doing when I'm having ice cream. And I'm like, oh, don't you? Like, one, that's so interesting and fascinating to me. But also, now you can enjoy your ice cream, because if you know how to accommodate it to make sure that it's healthy for you, you just have ice cream. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to have that other thought that's like, oh, I'm being naughty eating ice cream. Like you could just fully enjoy it.
Yeah.
And if you can do that often enough, you get rid of some of those strange fetishy things that we do to ourselves, where we blame ourselves and have guilt, shame, and fear built into these things that make our life worth and enjoyable and worth living.
Yeah. Well,
So
in that specific example, also, you may find, as some recent studies have shown, that the ice cream isn't actually that bad for you.
might
And it
actually be good for
sometimes,
you.
yeah, sometimes the ice cream that you think is going to have a bad effect on your blood sugar levels actually winds up not having it, and it's something else. And then you have, again, more choice, more autonomy, more control over what you do in your day. So no, I agree wholeheartedly. Well, I am going to post your socials one more time for folks who weren't here at the beginning, so that they can go through and connect with you. And while I do that, if there's anything that you want to share that we didn't get to, resources or anything you got going on, I'll just give the floor to you so I can get all this posted.
Yeah. That ESQ, I think you talked about and mentioned. I heard you typing after we talked about
Yes.
it. It's pretty wildly accessible. If you want to know, how to best start beginning to think about accommodating yourself, it's filling that as a really easy, simple way to open that door, to make it feel a little bit more like brushing your teeth instead of like, you know, is it Sisyphus pushing that boulder up the hill, or whoever, right? Or worse, the guy who's chained there as the buzzards eat his stomach every day,
Oh,
over and over and over again. They're so brutal in their allegories over there. It's
yes.
all life or death all the time. But I think if you look at that, it's going to be easy because you're going to see what strengths you have naturally and what strengths that if you think you should have, but you don't, and you've been yelling at yourself to be better, do more, rise up, let's go. You've just been being a jerk to yourself, not knowingly, not intentionally being a jerk to yourself. And so it's kind of nice to know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I did post a link to that, so if anybody's interested, you can go and pop through there and see what works for you and how it comes out for you also. I
And
might
if you
do it
get in
for
there and you're
funsies. I don't,
going,
maybe I'll be absolutely shocked, but I don't think that's something that I have. But I'm going to do it for fun, so we'll see.
I always think it's fun. What I really think is fun is when you compare people in the same family,
Yeah.
because task initiation can be really high for somebody and really low. And they're like, I always have to tell you to do stuff. And it's like, well, they don't have that strength. You have it in excess. And they're like, I always think of when I'm driving, I'm sane, but everybody else is either insane because they're going too fast or insane because they're going too slow. I'm the only
Mhm.
one that's normal. So,
It's true.
but with some of our executive functioning strengths, we have so much of it that we think this is the standard, and like the average is actually way lower. And then now you're having an unfair expectation of people you love and care about and respect and appreciate and want to respect and appreciate and love and care more. And so I do see a lot of times when people, partners specifically, take that, they're able to be like, oh, here's some light bulbs, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then they're able to sit on the same side of the table with the results on the other side and kind of pair up a little bit more and be like, all right, well, what do we do about this now? Like,
Hmm.
not an excuse, but an understanding, right?
Yeah. Now, is there one for kids to take, or is it just the same one?
There's different ones for kids. That one's a little bit more about what age they should be having specific
Yeah.
executive functioning traits at what age. So it's very developmental. So there's a series of them. And those are usually for formal diagnosis for a psychiatrist to review or mental health professional review with you, with your child. And you'd be taking the survey because 3-year-olds aren't great at taking self-assessment surveys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and then go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just going to say I feel like my 12-year-old is probably, he's able to answer stuff for himself. So I might just see if he'll take it, and then we can compare answers, and I'll go, see, this is why I have to get on to you for some things and really harp on it. He doesn't like when I tell him to do things multiple times. I'm like, well, it's been like 20 minutes since I told you, and you said you'd do it right then, and you haven't. So that's why I'm telling you again. So,
Well, and maybe that's like a time blindness thing where
mhm.
in his mind it's 3 minutes. Maybe he's
Yeah.
so absorbed in whatever that task is. I'm sure as you're reading books that you've been like,
Oh,
2 more
yeah.
minutes. And then like 3 hours go by and you're like, oh my God.
Yeah. No, one more
Oh,
chapter
okay.
is a real thing, most definitely. And I know that's what it is, and that's the only reason I'm like, okay, I'll give him 20 minutes and then I'll go remind him again. And he does. I'm sure he feels like, you just told me that, Mom. Why are you telling me again? And so I think having him take it and then I'll take it at the same time just for fun and see if we can compare our answers and go, look, there's real differences and we can recognize those differences, and now we can talk about them also. Maybe that'll put him on the same side as me, although he's 12 and Mom's not on the same side as a 12-year-old. So
But it could put you in a position where you're like, okay, so time blindness is a thing, and I said 20 more minutes or 10 more minutes. You said you're going to do it. You don't like me to remind you multiple times. So what are we going to do?
yeah,
So I do not have to remind you because I want to honor that, and I don't enjoy doing it. And I know you don't like
no.
it. So what's another solution? Um, you
Yeah.
know, I'm just getting curious about that, and now you are advocating for him. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to do this while he's got other things on his mind, it probably, won't be as
Oh,
effective. So
when does he not have other things on his mind, though? That's the. He's got. His mind's running a mile a minute all the time. So, but
yeah,
yeah, it'll be interesting at least. I'll have to let you know how it
yeah,
goes. Well, thank you so much for being here and for just having this conversation with us. I really appreciate the time that you took out of your day and just the amount that you're willing to share of your own story. I always think it's interesting to hear other folks talk about just what they've been through. So, thank you.
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. Well, to everybody who is here with us live, I'm going to disconnect with Garrett behind the scenes in just a minute, but I've got a puzzle for y'all. Actually, let me refresh this puzzle. Make sure that it's ready for you to work on. I've got a puzzle that you can work on in the meantime. I hope you got a lot out of that conversation. I know that I did, especially the part about how a diagnosis doesn't erase everything that came before it. It just really kind of gives it a name and gives you something to work on. But again, Garrett, thank you so much for your honesty and your expertise and just for showing up today and sharing your story with our Even Tacos Fall Apart community. And then to everyone watching, thank you for being here. Thank you for showing up and thank you for being just exactly who you are. I will be right back. Don't go anywhere. Okay, well, I hope y'all enjoyed that conversation. I know that I did. That was a really good one. I really enjoyed that. And I've got some things that I'm gonna go and do after that conversation, so that'll be really fun. Normally, I would be gaming right after this, but I'm gonna go pack for my vacation. So that's what I'm gonna go do instead. I'm not even sorry about it. Oh, no stream Wednesday, no stream next week at all. Oh, is that true? Hold on, let me look. No stream Wednesday, none Monday, none Wednesday. Okay, well, I'll see you in 2 Mondays. Back for another Mental Health Monday video right here. But thank you guys for being here. Really appreciate it. I hope you have a great rest of your week. And thanks for letting me take a little bit of time off. I know that I try not to take off too much time, but I gotta have a couple weeks in the summer. You know, go and lay on a beach. So y'all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will catch you next time. I can't say next week, but I'll catch you next time. Let me swap over to my ending screen. If you have something you are grateful for, feel free to talk about it in the chat. I will talk about something I am grateful for in just a second. Okay, well, mine's easy because I'm incredibly grateful for vacations because I'm going to Mexico and I'm looking forward to it and I'm going to go get ready for it right now. So, y'all have a good week. Talk to you later. Bye.